Hi there YouTube, my name is Morphsuit America. I do a lot of augments and affixes. I play on the Japanese PSO2, title and thumbnail should give it away. Let me talk about 8-slot units and why they're a pain in the butt to work with. Even if you have the pieces, even if you have the X amount of money you have, it's still a pain in the butt. It's going to be a lot of work. It is possible to do it, but you really need to know your stuff to work with it. Why am I not emphasizing on weapons? Why am I emphasizing on units? Because weapons, they can actually ignore this. To understand this video, or at least understand the terminology I'm going to toss at you, you will want to watch some specific videos. You can see it in the description or above my head. Pretty much it's the upslotting one and then also SSAs. Why is it important to know SSAs, or at least the little function that I explained in the Affix simulator? Because they can ignore the upslot penalty. That is good, because if they have certain numbers or certain SSA slots, if they can hold 5 of them, guess what? It's a guarantee that it's going to stay at whatever slot number it is. So if you have 5 random S-class abilities on something like a Light Weaver, it's going to secure that. It's not going to go down any further than that. So you have a bit of leeway. Outlet CX, Lightstream, they have a good chunk of them as well, and you could try to push to an A slot because of these SSAs. It increases your chances compared to just having one. And here's the problem with units, you only got one slot for an SSA. Everything else is pretty much a gamble. Even if you get a bunch of junk abilities, when you try to push it to an 8 slot, it is a big gamble. Note that this video is going to emphasize on the manual add ability way. We're not talking about the indirect way. The indirect way is something you would want to capitalize on and use more than this normal approach, this natural approach. I've done it a couple times, but I don't want to do it ever again because once again, it can be a headache. So if I go over here and I show you guys that this 7 slot, for example, if I use all these pieces and I try to push it to an 8 slot and I try to use as many junk abilities as I can, anything that can get me to 100 or close to it, these things are gonna be, the percent is gonna be bad. This is all at 30%. Now, if I have an SSA, that can at least cover one of these, but you're gambling with all these other slots that's at 30%. Yes, you can increase them through natural means, which I already explained in a separate video. You can try to increase this with the boost week. You can increase this with your ability success boosters. But do you really want to spend as much on a fodder piece? Now, if this is your main piece, you might want to use as much as you can. But that's the question. Do you want to spend as much to try to get something to an 8 slot? This is why if you don't have a lot of pieces on the market especially, or if you haven't farmed as much, working with an 8 slot unit is going to be a nightmare because you will have to consider all these different variables. Especially if you had to force stuff from a 7 slot to an 8 slot. And this is only with a junk ability. If I work with something that's already at a low percent, let's say I want to try to transfer the Spirit of 4. Let me try to get another junk ability back over here. You can see that Spirit of 4, it's not at a 40% anymore, it's at a 12%. And if that thing does not succeed in the transfer, you pretty much use a good chunk of resources to try to gamble on that, and it's not going to go well. So, that is why you don't want to try to do it normally. Like, if you want to, and it is possible to actually do it, especially if you have the parts and if you have the money to do it. But the other question is, once again, does the market have it? Because understand that the market will not have everything. Because there are certain things that you can't do because it's not there or no one has it. For example, let's say I want to try to make an 8 slot with a bunch of certain abilities, but the 3 big ones I want to have is Guardian Soul, Artifact, and Mana Rev. So if I did this in the normal way, obviously I can only use one of these pop items, and obviously there are capsules for Artifact and Mana Rev. But the big one that I want to try to do is, let's say, Mana Rev. And I have a certain plan to, let's say, just keep Guardian Soul and Artifact together by using receptors. Now, obviously, Global does not have it, but if I play on the Japanese side, that is a different story. But here's another problem. Are they at an 8 slot? Let us see. Let us check. So if I go over here, toy around with those options, and then let me type in Soul Receptor over here, and then type in Factor Receptor, you can see that, actually, that is not Factor Receptor, my bad. Let me go down here, do this, search for it. There's nothing. Nothing's going to pop up. So there goes your plan to try to keep everything at an 8 slot. Now let's see if there's even a 7 slot. Here's the problem with receptors. You cannot force it into an 8 slot. It has to drop naturally at whatever slot number it is. So the highest that I can go for in terms of the ship that I'm on, in terms of what I see on the market, especially if I don't farm for it, it's only at a 6 slot, and this is going to cost me 84 mil. So my plans to do that is kind of down the drain now. So let me talk about other abilities. Let's say you want crack 5 and returner 5. So the big thing is with these certain abilities, and returner is pretty much your veteran resolve over there in global. The big thing about this is that you need 36 of these to try to get a grade 5. But once again, you're going to need this at a certain slot. And if I go for 8 slot, it's going to cost me, well, there's a problem right there. I can't really buy them now, can't I? That means I have to try to farm for them. It is possible on the Japanese PSO2 compared to global, but even then, it is still RNG, because some of these might not drop at an 8 slot. You might get 6 slot and 7 slot. You could try to gamble and push it higher, but once again, remember those percentages from earlier? Yeah, you're gonna have to tackle those percentages now if it's at a low grade and you want to push it to an 8 slot. So let's just check the crack 1 market. If I go over here and check an 8 slot, you can see there's a good chunk of these, so it's not that bad. But you'll notice that if you didn't farm for any one of these at these 8 slots, they're gonna start to stack against you. You need 36 crack 1s to try to make 1 crack 5. And you're gonna need another 36 and another 36 if you try to put this on your other 2 unit pieces. So in total, do 36 times 3 is going to be... doing my calculations in my head. 108? Yeah, it's supposed to be 108. You need 108 of these, and these things increase, and you'll get to spend a lot on them. Now, you could try to go for crack 3s at an 8 slot. I'd say crack 3s, not a returner. Oh, that's interesting. That one actually has both returner 3 and a crack 3 out of 23. So some of these are hidden gems. But, yeah. Yeah, I didn't even put returner 3 there. That one's actually unique. I didn't realize that one has a returner 3. But let's see what happens if I look at stuff that has a returner 3, though, at an 8 slot. If I look over here, you can see that there's only a couple of them on the market. So, whatever ability you are going for, you gotta have to do some research and stare at the market and figure out, hey, is this possible? And once again, there are SAFs that could try to help you and get you a 100% ability. But once again, basic rule of thumb, especially when you're working with SAF stuff, it needs to be at the same slot or higher. So if you're working with an 8 slot, that thing has to be at an 8 slot. Can you get it to an 8 slot without having to deal with a bunch of fucking RNG over there? So the entire point of this video, it's a headache to work with an 8 slot. It is possible to do if you're lucky and you bump into all these different factors. But yeah, like 8 slot units, if you try to fix them naturally, it's gonna be a pain in the butt. It is possible to do, but you got to do a lot of calculations. You got to figure it out. You got to do a lot of research. You got to do a lot of math. You got to do a lot of browsing and staring and calculations and what if scenarios and if you need to adapt and stuff. If you can't do all that, then you shouldn't really deal with an 8 slot. You can leave a couple of them as they are if they drop decent abilities. For example, I think I have, I don't know if it's on this character. It might be on a different character. If I look at the unit stuff. Yeah, I don't have it on this character, I think. Well, this one drops as it is naturally at an 8 slot, but not a lot of good abilities. And do I really want to fix this? That's at an 8 slot and stuff. I don't know. That depends on how you want to do it. Personally, for me, I wouldn't do it just because all of these are slightly bad. I could obviously get an SAF from this unit piece by itself. It gives me a Doom Break 2. But other than that, I would have to affix this with other good abilities. Once again, there are SAFs and stuff, but I got to do a lot of manipulation. Some of this stuff, if I go for very cheap stuff, it is possible. But even then, I wouldn't be a big fan of it if I had to spend above a certain budget. If I was trying to keep everything below 10 mil, maybe 20 mil, 30 mil. Like, it's going to be hard if I work with 8 slots because it's just an 8 slot. 8 slots, they demand a lot. If I were to look at, let's say, an EXO, let's go with, like, Acti Soul, and if I try to find an 8 slot for this, it might be expensive. Now, I don't think it is just because of the event that's going on, but I would need to do a lot of manipulations, and it's going to stack against me if I don't have all these pieces. So if I go for that, let's say I want to try to go for a Novel weapon, or a Novel unit piece at an 8 slot. I could technically get it with my badges, but then it is at a regular 5 slot, and I would need to push this certain Novel to that 8 slot. Now, I could use these to push it to an 8 slot as well, but it's just going to be a pain because guess what? RNG again with this damn thing, and it's not going to be all at 100%. And then once I complete that, guess what? I still need to figure out these other abilities as well. It's just a pain in the butt. That's the entire point. So, if you really want to get to an 8 slot on a unit, you want to use ability transfer passes. You want to hold on to them and stock up as many as you can. Especially if you're working from a 4 slot and you're trying to build it up to an 8 slot. It is possible, but you need to be aware of how many passes you are using. Yes, it will eat up a good chunk of resources, but it is worth it, so you don't need to deal with the headache that is a natural 8 slot and going through the normal process of trying to toy around with it. Because there's a lot of variables you have to consider and note. That is it for this video though. Thank you guys for watching. If you have any question, comment, concerns, put it down below. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.